Welcome to the first Sober Spotlight interview of 2024. Today's guest is Todd Kinney. He is a practicing attorney out of Nebraska, the father of four, a husband, and now the author of the book, I Didn't Believe It Either, explaining all the things he knew and didn't know about sobriety. Todd and I talk about what counts as memorable experiences and his newfound passion in talking about sobriety with people who are interested from hearing his story. Please welcome Todd. Hey. Hi, welcome. Good morning, Todd. Thank you
Good
so
morning.
much for joining us. I am excited to chat with you today. You have a new book coming out, just came
I do.
out. And it's your first book, correct?
Yes.
Wow, so exciting. So let's dive in a little and talk about that. I don't want to ask the generic question of what prompted you to write the book because that's pretty obvious, but a lot of people have a book in their head and they just don't land the plane, right? I think in my head I've written 20 books and it's weird they're
Right.
not published. So how did this project, kind of start to finish, just make it all the way through completion?
Yeah, it started around about a year after I quit drinking. That was when the idea was kind of born for the first time. And then even after that, it took a while for it to really take off. But when I hit a year, it was a big milestone for me, and I felt like I had really kind of come through the everything I needed to come through, and I had kind of gotten to the other side, and I was just incredibly grateful for that, and felt a really strong pull to do something to kind of help others who were in a similar position that I had been in not that long ago. And I was helped so much by hearing other people's stories and reading their own memoirs about their struggles with alcohol. And I thought, why don't I do it through a book? And then I thought, I don't know if I have an interesting enough story to write a book. And that took a while to get over. And then I thought, I don't know if I can write a book. And that took a little while to get over. Um, but I just kind of went for it. I just decided I was going to do it. And it's funny because obviously I say I don't know if this ever would have happened if I had stopped drinking. Well, it wouldn't have, because that's what the book is about. But just in terms of mind space and time, and I'm not a professional author. I have a day job. Um, but it's amazing how much that opens up when you remove alcohol from the equation. Um, and I had, for the first time, I had a lot of mental energy and just straight up time to devote to something like this that I hadn't had before, or didn't think I had before, because it was consumed with alcohol and everything that comes along with that. So that's when it was born. And then, a mere 2.5 years later, I got it done.
I love that. I love that you pointed out that your sobriety is the testament um, to your time and your mental clarity to bring this project all the way to fruition, because that's the secret sauce right there. And I want to talk about the title, because I really think that's a real catchy title, because so many of us, when it comes to sobriety, we really didn't believe it either until we're on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny that I didn't come up with that title until the very end. And I had cycled through, I don't know, a dozen titles, some of which I settled on and thought were going to be it. And then I just couldn't pull the trigger on it. It was really hard coming up with a title, but I was very happy with the one I came up with. And I wanted to name it something like that, because one of the big reasons why I decided to write this book was because this alcohol-free life that I stumbled upon was so far exceeded my expectations of what it would be like. It just blew me away. And I thought, I want to tell people about this who are interested in hearing about it. Because I didn't believe it when I started out. When I made the decision to quit, I was comfortable in my decision to quit. And I knew it was the right decision at the end of the day. And I knew in my gut that it was the right thing to do. But I also thought I was signing up for a little bit of a boring
Mhm.
existence, kind of a gray, you know, life where I'd always have this nagging sense that I was missing out, that
Yeah.
I thought I would always be a little sad that
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
drink anymore. And
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
going to be, and that was with me for a couple months after I quit. And I thought it was going to be with me for the rest of my life. And so I was a little bummed about that. And then it went away. And as you get further and further into sobriety, um, at least for me, I realized there's this whole other way of living out there that is so much better than one, what I was doing before, and two, what I thought it was going to be like. And I thought, I there was a point where I loved drinking.
Yeah.
It was me, it was my identity, it was who I was, it was what I did. It was just I loved it. And yeah,
Yeah.
there were some bad things that came with it. But for a long time, that my love for it overshadowed those things. And then obviously the scales tipped at some point. But I just was fast. I couldn't believe that, like, someone who used to love drinking as much as I did loved this alcohol-free life so much more than anything I ever knew when I was drinking. And so I wanted to tell people, like, listen, I get it. I didn't believe it either. And I didn't know it was going to be like this either. And you can't truly know until you do it yourself and you go through the stuff and you get through to the other side. Um, but one of the things that eventually kept kept me coming back to this idea of maybe I should quit drinking was I heard enough people say, like, this was the best decision I ever made. I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. I don't regret doing this. And at first you're like, yeah, whatever, whatever. And then once you hear it enough times, I was like, okay, either all these people are in on the same lie and it's just a big joke, or there's something to this. And eventually you're like, there's gotta be something to this, or this many people can't be wrong.
Yeah.
So I wanted a title that kind of conveyed, like, look, I get it. It sounds crazy, but I'm here to tell you it's true. And I know that because I experienced it myself.
Yeah. I love how you put that. So you've been sober, what, close to 5 years? You got sober in
Little over
2019,
4 years.
little over 4 years.
Yeah.
What did your journey look like? Did you attend meetings? Did you attend group support, 12 step? What did that look like for you?
So I did not attend. I didn't do AA. I didn't do any formal program. I when I decided to quit, I it started out with a self-imposed 90-day break, which I had done before, but I and it worked for a while, and then I fell back into old patterns and everything started coming back, and so I was like, okay, I'm doing this 90 days again. That's what it started as. My therapist at some point said, why don't you do 6 months? Because you've done 3 months before. It had, worked for a while, but not for good. So why don't you do something different? I was like, all right, I'll commit to 6 months. And then sometime between that 3 month and 6 month mark, I decided I was done for good. Um, And it also around that time, my therapist was like, you need a community. You need to immerse yourself in other people who are going through something similar. And at the time I was like, oh, I don't think so. I'm doing fine. Like, I wasn't having any intense physical cravings. I was having a lot of mental awkward moments and uncomfortableness, and figuring out how to do social events without drinking was difficult for me. But I wasn't white knuckling it from a physical standpoint, like, oh my gosh, I need a drink now. And
Mhm.
so I thought, you know, I'm fine. I don't really need a community. Well, then I stumbled upon the Luckiest Club because I had read Laura
Yay.
McCowan's book. Um, and then COVID hit and the Luckiest Club started up. And I joined the Luckiest Club and started attending these online sobriety support group meetings. And I just lurked in the background for a while, I think, as a lot of us do. Um, this is so bizarre to me. I hid it from my wife for a while that I was doing these online meetings, which is so weird.
Of all things to hide from your wife.
I right, right. Yeah.
I'm
Well,
kidding.
obviously I had some stuff going on. I but I love the meetings because the thing I love most about the meetings is you'd sit there and look at your computer screen and there'd be 200, 225 people, however many it was, all there who you knew were going through something similar. And it really made me feel like, okay, I'm not on an island. Because there was a time where I literally thought I was the only person in the world who struggled with alcohol in the way that I did.
Which
And
is
I
funny
thought,
because so many people have that exact same thought.
yeah,
So how can we
yes,
all be the only person in the world, right?
right.
Go ahead.
Right. So those meetings, every time I got on one of those meetings, I'd see 200 people who were all going through something similar. I mean, we all had different stories and different circumstances, but there was always a common thread of I've got this issue and I want to do something about it, and I'm not real sure how to best go about doing that. And so those meetings were great. That I guess that was my program, so to speak. I didn't do a formal AA program. I didn't do 12 steps, but I did lean a lot on those TLC meetings early on, and they were a big help. And frankly, I connected with people that I'm still friends with today, and that I'm really grateful for. And it turns out my therapist knew what she was talking about.
Love that. Yeah. So really sort of unbeknownst to you, you did the recovery piece by getting a therapist and getting into support meetings and listening and absorbing the information from other people and realizing you're not alone. Not only are you
Yeah.
not alone, but there are hundreds of other people.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Yeah.
yeah, that's
I mean,
incredible.
one of the biggest things I've realized since, kind of telling my story and putting it out there is there are so many people out there who want to talk about this stuff, who feel like they can't, or they don't know how, or they're scared to. And I get it. I was in that boat. Um, but there's a lot of people out there wanting to talk about this.
So tell me about that. When now that you've written this book and you've blown your anonymity out of the water, your wife knows you go to these meetings. I'm kidding. But you've publicly put it out there, and I imagine people are coming to you. They want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The first I was never secretive about, the fact that I was quitting, but I quit in October of 2019, and then COVID hit the following, what, March. So and obviously nobody was really going out doing a lot of things once COVID hit for a long period of time. So after, March 2020, I didn't have that part where we were socializing with friends and it would come up. So my family knew, my close friends and people who I saw on a regular basis knew. But there were a lot of people kind of in my sphere who didn't. And when I put it out there for the first time on social media, right around my year, right at my year mark, and I was really nervous about it, even though I felt really good about the decision. I remember I almost talked myself out of it at the last minute before I put it out there. It was funny because I thought a lot about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to kind of present it. And then I spent the 24 hours before I put it out there talking myself out of it. And then ended up, talking myself back into it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I was blown away by how many people reached out, not just to say like, this is great, I'm proud of you. But I had so many people reach out and say, oh my gosh, this is my story. This is my husband's story. This is my brother's story. Would you be willing to talk to so and so? And it just opened up this. Ever since then, I will meet on a regular basis with people who reach out and say, I've watched you from afar. I have your story resonates with me. I think I want to do something about my drinking. Can we chat? And I love doing that with people, because I feel so passionate about what I've found and how much it surprised me from taking alcohol out of my life, that if anyone's interested in trying to find that, I will. It's easy to want to help people find that, because it's been
It
so
really
popular.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. I find that that's sort of how I kind of eased into coaching. Was this is something I naturally could talk about for hours and feel so much passion around.
Yeah.
Um, so when you wrote the book and you listed, some of the things that you couldn't believe either, one of the things you mentioned was deeper connections. And that's not something you hear a lot of men talk about. So I wanted to get your perspective on what that looked like for you.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the male element, because part of the, when I joined TLC, as you know, it was probably 90% women at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
I think it's changed a little bit, but it was very much female centered at the time. And I didn't really mind that. I honestly I felt a little safer sharing stuff with females. I felt like my male audience or friends, whatever, might be a little more judgmental, a little harsher. And it was so tied up in
yeah,
my identity as a guy. And
yeah.
I have a chapter in the book about my identity as a male, and what it meant to give it up. I mean, I felt like I was handing over half of my manhood when I quit. And it
Give me your
was,
man card.
yeah, yes. And I was like, who am I as a guy if I don't
Yeah,
drink? And it was really scary. And so my book is not geared towards males, but I do have a chapter in there on it. And I think it's something, we don't talk about it as much as males. Female, I think women are better at forming support groups for things like this, and they're better at sharing their feelings.
everything.
And I think it's changing, but guys need to I we need to talk guys need to talk more about this. And but the connection thing, going back to your original question, was I was that there's many things that I've discovered in an alcohol-free life that I did not expect. And one of them was, when you remove alcohol, um, you think when you're drinking, you think like going for beers with the guys, that's where the connections are made, and that's where it's at.
Yeah.
And is it really a something worth doing if there's not going to be alcohol involved? I mean, that's what I thought. Like,
Yes.
why would you go golfing and not drink while you're
Yes.
golfing? Why would you go meet a buddy out to watch a basketball game and not drink? Like that doesn't even count as getting together with your buddy.
I
And
love it.
what I've discovered was it's actually backwards. It's totally backwards. Like the connection level you can get when you remove alcohol is so much better. And it's so much more genuine and it's so much more meaningful. And I've noticed it in particular I've noticed it with friends, and that's why I tell people all the time, like a gathering of sober people that don't, who don't drink is just feels different than a gathering when alcohol is involved. Even if it's not a lot of alcohol, even if it's not a night where people are drinking from 8 to midnight, it's just different. Um, and it's hard to explain if you haven't done both. But I've noticed it with friends. I've noticed it a lot with my kids. That's been a big one for me. I'm more available and I have more room for those connections. Um, because I never realized, even when I wasn't actively drinking, I didn't realize how much space alcohol took up in my life. I didn't drink for the most part, I didn't drink during the week, but it still took up space in my life. It still occupied my mind. I was still thinking about Friday night or that social event on Thursday night where I would get to drink. I was still thinking about it all the time. And it blew me away how much space was freed up when I quit. And that leaves room for things like connections that, again, I didn't even know was missing before. There's so much about alcohol that we don't even know is going on until we step away from it for a while.
Yeah, because we're so used to drinking at every event all the time in all circles of our lives. We don't know. You're right. We don't even know what we don't know
Right.
about living an alcohol-free life.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I didn't know that I didn't know how much it like I said, I didn't know how much it occupied me, but I just didn't, I had no sense of how much it affected various aspects of my life. Like I said, even when I wasn't actively drinking. Um, and that's why I tell people all the time, any break you can take from alcohol, whether it's 10 days or 30 or 90, is good because you can't even begin to realize that stuff until you step back for a certain amount of time. So I'm glad I had those break. I had a couple 90-day breaks before I decided to quit, and those gave me a glimpse of what was out there. And at the time, I wasn't willing to dive into that because that was too much. That was too much. Um, but it gave me a glimpse. It gave me something I could come back to.
When you say too much, it sounds like a lot, and I'm trying not to go coachy here, but it sounds to me like, but I keep going back to what you mentioned about the fear of missing out, the FOMO, the time with your buddies. Like, were you convinced that and I love that you said it doesn't even count, like I'm not even gonna be counted in or a part of. Was that a big piece of it for you?
Oh yeah, yes. It was one of I. There's a chapter in my book called "None of the Bad Things Happened," and it's kind of a list of a few big things I thought were going to happen when I quit drinking. And one of them was like I would never have fun again. Like, yes, I would enjoy, there'd be things I would enjoy, and but the memories, the stories that you tell, the things you look back on and laugh about. I mean, I legitimately thought those days were over, which is crazy now, but I 100% believe that at the time. Um, and that's why the prospect of the idea of giving it up can be so scary for people. That's why it was so scary for me. Because you really think like you're leaving a lot of good things behind. And like I said, signing up for, just kind of a blah
Yeah.
existence. And that, yeah, that couldn't be further from the truth. But there were a lot of things where I would have bet a lot of money were going to happen by me quitting drinking. And none of them did. None of them did. And the positive things that have come into my life so far outweigh um anything that I was getting from alcohol. It's not even funny.
I love that because this is really a podcast where we talk about the positive things. You know, we're we call it a spotlight because we are here to show like one, drunk never looks good, but like life is freaking awesome when you quit drinking. So like without, I mean, this is kind of putting on you on the spot, but what's like what's the thing that stands out the most to you?
Oh, I like that question. Because I like talking about this. The thing that stands out the most, and again, this is one of the things that surprised me the most because I didn't see it coming. I didn't think it was something I needed. I didn't, but the internal calm and peace and contentment that I have now is something that I didn't know existed. Um, I didn't know I needed it. I didn't know I was lacking it. If you would have asked me when I was drinking, like, are you at peace with yourself? I would have said, yeah, I am, but I wasn't. And I didn't know that until because I didn't know how much I didn't realize how much it was tormenting me until I stopped and got away from alcohol and took some time to reflect on that. So like
Yeah.
the best example, I've got three teenage boys at home and we have a 11-year-old daughter. And anyone with teenagers knows they can push your buttons. And the number of like stupid, petty fights that would happen in our household because they would push my buttons and I would react has decreased by like 95%. Like it just doesn't happen anymore. I just don't get worked up about things that used to get me worked up about. I'm not as reactive as I used to be. Um, I take time to step back and think about things before I take any action. I'm so much happier than I was. And again, I would have described myself as a pretty happy person um when I was drinking, but what I feel now internally in terms of happiness and gratitude and peace and calm is a whole nother level. Like I said, that I didn't even know was out there.
Yeah. I love that. And then the ability to parent without being so reactionary, especially when you have teenagers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
That has
Yeah.
helped enormously. I don't look back much and rue that I didn't give up alcohol sooner, although I wish I would have. But one of the things I do look back on is, man, I'd love to do some of these other parenting phases as a non-drinker. Because I know they would have been easier and
Yeah.
I would have been better at it. But yeah, I don't spend too much time thinking about that. But the parenting aspect has been one of the best for me too, because it's helped. Giving up alcohol has positively impacted every facet of my life.
Yeah. So, we talk about fear of missing out and what we don't expect. And I'm just gonna kind of start to wrap up with this little story. I also have been a member of TLC, and some of the TLC members joined together in Seattle, which is close to my hometown, and we had like a little house party, and we were eating lots of junk food and dancing and listening to music, and we were so loud and hysterical that people walking past the Airbnb that we were at downtown Seattle were like, what's going on in there? Like, what if this is a house party? I'm in. I mean, we were up late and just like hysterical laughter, of just being so silly and dancing and that is talk about I could not believe that that would be my life sober.
Yeah.
And those were all people that I had met on meetings through TLC that they lived in my computer, and here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
So, um, what does life look like for you now, like for fun? Like, what is like just a screaming good time?
Well, it's funny you asked that because I was just talking to someone yesterday about kind of what that looks like. I stay home a lot more now than I did before. Um, but I also just I had a wedding of a good friend of mine over the on New Year's Eve, actually. Um, who I've known this guy since fifth grade. And so all of our friends were back for this, who I've known for 30 plus years. And kind of to your story, I had more fun at that wedding than I have probably had at any other, wedding of my life. Some people were drinking, most people there were drinking, but I was not. I stayed up till 1 a.m., which never happens. And
Yeah.
And I had a blast. And I woke up the next day and didn't have any of the bad stuff that would normally accompany a night of drinking like that with my lifelong friends at a wedding. So it looks something, sometimes it looks like it used to before, except with alcohol removed.
Yeah.
But it's funny, the things I had a list of like traveling, like tailgating for football games. I go to Iowa football games a lot, and tailgating is one of my favorite activities in the world. Tailgating, um, traveling for work. I thought those things were all things that I would never enjoy again. Vacations,
For
I
sure.
thought those are never going to be the same.
Yeah.
And every one of those things I enjoy more now as a non-drinker than I did as a drinker, which I think is amazing. I mean, it that's not to say the first tailgate I went to without drinking, I
Yeah.
didn't love it. It was kind of weird. It was very weird. But you do those things once, twice, three times, four times, and eventually, like everything in life, you realize this is actually better without alcohol. So I do most of the same things that I did before. I don't go out as much. I don't go to bars. I don't mind being in a bar, but I don't I won't go out to dinner and then go to a bar for 3 hours afterwards like I would before.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a lot of the same things I did before. I just enjoy them. Um, and I enjoy the mundane things in life are so much more enjoyable now. Um,
Yeah.
a basketball game of my son or daughter on Friday night at 8 o'clock in my drinking days, I would have been annoyed to be at because it was taking me away from my drinking. Yes, I would have paid attention to the basketball game and I would have shown up for my son or daughter. But in my mind, I would have been like, well, this is crap. I
Yeah.
should be over at that bar drinking or whatever. And that's gone now. And so you just enjoy the basketball game. Like, what a novel concept.
Yeah.
Enjoy your kid's basketball game on a Friday night.
Yeah. And, our happiness set point changes when we are
Yes.
not dumping in alcohol. So that's the key right there is real life actually becomes enjoyable. And the things that you want to be present for are you can be present for and they're fun. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
imagine going to your kid's sport event and enjoying it and actually paying attention and not being like, oh my God,
Yeah.
dribble.
Yeah. And that was something I heard before I stopped. I heard things like that, not before I stopped drinking, but like in early days. And I was kind of like, well, what does this mean? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I couldn't grasp it. And now I do. And it's
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It really is.
Awesome. So Todd, where can we find your book?
So you can find it on my website, toddkinney.com. It's Kinney, or on Amazon or Walmart, Goodreads, barnesandnoble.com.
Awesome.
It is out there. Yes.
And one final question for the slackers like me. Is there going to be an audiobook?
I believe so. I've gotten that question a few times. And I have some I Peggy Cooney, who I think you know,
Yes, yes.
who has answered 500 questions from me about the book writing and publishing process, referred me to the place where she went and did her audiobook. And I think I'm going to go out there and do that there. I just need to figure out a time and to set that up. But yes, I believe there will be an audio version.
Awesome. Yeah, I love audiobooks.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, I mean, it's the multitasker in me, and I
Yeah.
tend to just walk and process and listen, and and then I can bookmark on the audiobook and go back, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Heck yeah, yeah. So we'll put your information in the show notes, so people can reach out to you, they can read your book. And yeah, just this was a great conversation. So many legit points, and you get your man card back. I mean,
Good.
win-win,
We'll
right?
put that in a safe place.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.